So now it is time for us to heap on some praise for the one and only Kris Dunn, the man on a veteran minimum contract earning right around $2.5 million across 2 years, being the end of last season and this entire year, who really has impressed beyond imagination in the minutes that he's played. Thanks for tuning in this video. It's your boy Wraith Hoops. Let's go ahead and get into this one. At the age of 29 years old, Kris Dunn is not exactly a spring chicken in the league, but he doesn't really have the same accolades and backgrounds that a lot of other NBA stars do. With that said, I was an advocate for him being the starting point guard coming out of training camp, considering how he started playing games last season when they first brought him onto the roster. He doesn't have the greatest shot-making ability, but he made some shots, he made some plays, and more importantly, he was a defensive floor general, which really was something that the Utah Jazz needed since they traded away Mike Conley. Now, starting out the season, they did go THT, and things didn't really go well, and after 8 games, they made the change and went ahead and let rookie Keyonte George go ahead and get the nod. With that being said, though, things didn't pan out the way they hoped they would, and so Keyonte George eventually saw the bench, and Kris Dunn was installed. Now, THT has also had another stint of games where he's played honestly much better than he had at any other point in the season, especially coming off the bench, and he has found that he cannot regain that starting spot because of how well Kris Dunn has played since he obtained the starting spot, which is quite impressive in and of itself, because when you think of Kris Dunn and you look at the stats, his numbers don't really jump off the page for you, especially if you just look at his points, because he averages low single digits. And his shooting percentages across the board haven't been the greatest, but overall, the reason why you play him is because of his defensive versatility and his ability to set guys up and make the correct passes. When you have a star player in Lauri Markkanen, you have another scorer that's been very consistent in Colin Sexton. You also have Simone Fontecchio. You also have Walker Kessler, John Collins, guys like that. A lot of them don't create a lot of offense for themselves. And with that being said, they needed a true table setter to go ahead and put them in positions to be successful. While Colin Sexton's playmaking sense has improved over the season as the games have gone on, and more so as he stepped into the starting role, it still quite isn't enough to push his team over the edge and keep them in the winning waters. Insert Kris Dunn, a man who on multiple occasions has put together a double-double or darn near double-double with the simple fact of him scoring single-digit numbers, but having double-figure assists. He's played in 30 matches with 12 of them being starts and averaging 17.1 minutes per game. With that being said, he averages 4.9 points, 2.8 rebounds, 4.1 assists, 0.8 steals, 0.4 blocks, and only 1.2 turnovers per game. Shooting splits of 44.5% from the field and 35.7% from the three-point line, to go along with 68.8% from the free throw line. Those numbers are cool and all, but they don't really do him justice for how good he's been. Now, off the bench, he really was getting just whatever scraps of minutes there were left in the rotation, which when THT was getting a lot of minutes, wasn't barely any. That being said, once a lot of players went down with injuries and you had him installed into the starting lineup, you saw a different side of him that they had not seen since honestly last season and perhaps at any other point in a Utah Jazz uniform. With that in mind, in the 12 games that he started, he's averaging 23.2 minutes per match, to go along with 5.8 points, 3.8 rebounds, 6.1 assists, 1.3 steals, 0.9 blocks, and 1.5 turnovers. Now, the issue with him as he stepped into the starting role is the fact that his shooting percentages just haven't been all that you would love for them to be. He's scoring 40.8% of his field goal attempts and only 27.3% of his three-point attempts, to go along with 83.3% from the free throw line. Now, the field goal percentages are pretty rough. In some categories, they're rivaling when Jordan Clarkson was having his shooting slump to start the season out. However, you'll find that it's on a very small sample size of shots, so it doesn't affect the game as greatly as it did for other players in slumps. With that being said, he's only averaging 5.9 shot attempts on a nightly basis. So he's getting low scoring nights, having high assist nights, and typically getting a block in most games and getting a steal or two as well. That doesn't even take into account the level of communication and just effective teammate leadership that he has when he's on the defensive side of the floor, directing traffic, letting guys know what plays they're running, letting guys know what position they need to be, who needs to help, who needs to overhelp, and just letting other guys know what they need to do on the floor. Now, overall, in the 12 matches that he has led this team, they have won way more than they've managed to lose. With that being said, his box score plus minus has been positive in all but 4 of those matches. With that being said, his average box plus minus is a 1.9, which works out to a total of a plus 23, which is pretty darn good considering the fact that this was a guy that at the beginning of the season had no minutes to his name and really was just getting whatever scraps were left for him behind a veteran point guard and a rookie point guard. Now, I was an advocate for Kris Dunn from the very beginning because I knew what he was capable of doing and what he brings to the table for whatever roster he does end up playing for. A lot of people bring a lot of questions into it because they feel as though he really is just a guy that can pass the ball well and play defense. And it's like, okay, cool. But for them, I would say, who do you want to stand in front of your future franchise point guard? If the Utah Jazz genuinely believe that Keyonte George is the future of this team from the point guard standing, and at the center you're going to go with Walker Kessler, whether they end up trading Larry Markkinen or not, it only makes sense that you have to give Keyonte George and Walker Kessler the proper time to develop into the players you want. Because if you rush the development, their confidence is going to take a hit. Their development isn't going to go as well. It's going to be very shaky and non-consistent. And then you're going to end up with a player that is light years behind who they should have been in their career. And if you're the Utah Jazz, who already aren't a big market team and can't just attract big market players, you need to be able to make the small plays as you go and take that drafted talent and make the most out of them. With that being said, I believe from the beginning of the season that Kris Dunn was the ideal guy alongside Keyonte George. If you want a veteran, you want somebody that's going to be confident but not overconfident. They're not going to be too mouthy. They're not going to be ignorant to the game. They're going to be understanding and a genuine floor general. You want somebody that's a great defender because usually rookie guards that are good at scoring tend to be pretty shoddy defenders. And considering the fact that Keyonte George is roughly the same size and frame of Kris Dunn minus a few pounds, it makes sense that if he gains a couple pounds and just has a lot of time to develop and focus on what Kris Dunn does well and combine it with what he already does well himself, you're going to have a pretty darn good point guard going forward. Now, the biggest thing that I would say for Keyonte George is efficiency. He takes the proper shots, but the shots just haven't been falling. Now, as of late, he's had a couple on and off games where it looks like he's starting to flip the switch and things are looking really good. But the biggest takeaways from Kris Dunn as a leader and as a player on this team, specifically as a starting point guard alongside Colin Sexton at the shooting guard spot, is they both play off of each other well. And Kris Dunn is known to defer. He doesn't take very many shots at all during the game, and he only plays about 18 minutes a night, even when he's starting in games. So you can believe that realistically, he's going to be the guy that's going to be ideal if you want to show somebody what a pure point guard looks like. Some guy that's not going to hunt his own shot, but a guy that's always going to make sure whoever's open is getting the ball in a timely manner with the spirals on their fingertips so that he can go ahead and sink that shot. That's what he's known for. Combine the elite defense that he plays on a night in, night out basis, not just from a steals and blocks category, but also from the simple fact that he's always on the opposing team's best guard player and he's always doing his darnest to get a stop. Effort can't be taught. Intangibles like a mental standpoint situation can also not be taught. It has to be observed and experienced for some players to simply get it, and Kris Dunn just has that gene. If Keyonte George can observe him enough and recognize and take pointers from the man in practice and even on the bench in sideline situations and during timeouts, I think that he's going to be a pretty darn good point guard, because then you're going to have a guy who's confident enough to shoot the ball, knows when to make the proper pass, and can get the ball there regardless of if his shot is on or off, and then an elite defender to boot. That's a situation that you can't really give up if you're the Utah Jazz, especially if you think Keyonte George is that guy. Now, Keyonte hasn't seemed to be much of a great playmaker as of late, and I'm hoping that he does end up taking a turn for the better. But for now, we need to praise Kris Dunn for doing a darn good job, because ever since he stepped into the starting role, the Jazz had 9 wins before he started. And since he started, they're 9-3. So they've doubled it. Combine that with the fact that a lot of guys are healthy that weren't originally healthy, and you have a recipe for significant success. Now, some of the wins have actually come against teams that are missing a star player or a key rotation piece, but nevertheless, the Utah Jazz got the job done. And compared to the team that started out the season losing almost double as many games as they had won, this is in stark contrast to that. And you have to be willing to appreciate all the little cogs in the machine that helped get that job done. And quite honestly, even though he's not getting the true praise that he deserves, considering he only plays roughly 16 to 22 minutes a night, with the exception of a couple games, Kris Dunn is a big reason why the Utah Jazz have been able to come out strong, play make well, defend well against opposing guards, and get the job done when they really needed to so that they don't get rolled over in the first half and still have a chance to close the game out strong and get the W at the end of the game. With that being said, you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you feel like Kris Dunn is the ideal point guard until Keyonte George is ready? Or would you prefer to keep Kris Dunn on the roster but trade another guard in hopes of finding a player like a Tyus Young or Alonzo Ball when Lonzo's healthy that can stand in front and either teach Keyonte how to do it or perhaps take the show for themselves? With that being said, thanks for tuning in this video. As always, it's your boy Wraith Hoops. Make sure to like the video, comment your thoughts about Kris Dunn's situation down below. Make sure to subscribe, turn on post notifications, and become a member if you haven't to support the channel and help more videos come out. With that being said, good morning, good evening, good night, no matter where you're on the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.